We have a saying for it. When the cat's away, the mice will play. What we mean is that when an authority figure is absent, we can expect to see those who are subject to that authority figure act out in all sorts of mischief. Paul would not have known this saying himself, but he would certainly have known the reality it points to. And he wants to make sure the Philippians do not fall into the temptation to engage in mischief or foolishness in his absence. Hello, I'm Stuart Baskin, pastor of First Presbyterian Church of Tyler, Texas, and this is your daily devotional for Thursday, September 11th, 2025. The words Paul chooses at this point in his letter are bracing. Recall that he's told them about his own imprisonment on behalf of the gospel and has claimed that, far from a defeat, his imprisonment has actually served to advance the gospel. He says this to encourage them in their own journey of faith in an often hostile climate. We know that if they succumbed to fear, they could have begun to turn on each other, breaking the bonds of love that held them together. Paul assures them that their present circumstances, like his, are not only temporary, but, after the pattern of Jesus Christ, whose act of humility in coming to live among us and to suffer and die for us, and whose very suffering and humiliation led to his exaltation by God, that their own present sufferings, assuming they held to their faith, would certainly result in their own exaltation by God. Now Paul uses a word that he frequently uses throughout his letter when he comes to the point. Therefore. He writes, "Therefore, my beloved, just as you have always obeyed me, not only in my presence, but much more now in my absence, work out your own salvation with fear and trembling. For it is God who is at work in you, enabling you both to will and to work for his good pleasure. Do all things without murmuring and arguing, so that you may be blameless and innocent, children of God without blemish in the midst of a crooked and perverse generation, in which you shine like stars in the world. It is by your holding fast to the word of life that I can boast on the day of Christ that I did not run in vain or labor in vain. But even if I am being poured out as a libation over the sacrifice and the offering of your faith, I am glad and rejoice with all of you. And in the same way, you also must be glad and rejoice with me." So because their current suffering, like his own, is to the glory of God, they too will experience God's favor in their endurance, Paul says, provided they hold fast to the faith. The problem, as Paul sees it, is that in his absence from them, it would be very easy for them to fall back into old habits and destructive patterns of behaviors. While the cat's away, the mice will play, so to speak. Paul is absent, and in his absence he is afraid they will backslide. His great "therefore" signals that what follows is near the heart of his message. Instead of relying on him to police their behavior, it is time instead for them to take responsibility for their faith. Work out your own salvation with fear and trembling, he says. What this does not mean is that they have to engage in works righteousness to earn their salvation. And it also does not mean that they need to fall back into fear. What he means is that now that he is absent from them, they need to take ownership of their own conduct and their own faith development, a prospect which would surely have been a bracing one for them. After all, it is always easier to lean on someone else to make sure we're doing the right thing than it is to constantly chart our own course. It's kind of like finally getting through school and starting out in one's chosen field. Only now, there is no constant feedback by teachers or professors. If we're lucky, there are people who become mentors to us and can gently nudge us in the right directions. But more often we find ourselves on our own, making mistakes that we don't always even recognize until after the damage is done. And that's just the regular life in the world. What Paul does here is raise the stakes for the Philippians. They now have to work out their lives and live the faith on their own. True, he promises to send them his trusted lieutenant Timothy soon, and in the meantime he's sending them another subordinate named Epaphroditus. But they, Timothy and Epaphroditus, cannot guarantee their success. The Philippians still need to take responsibility for their own faith development. It is, as I've said, a bracing prospect, not for the faint of heart. And if that weren't enough, what we'll read tomorrow, Paul confronts the real issue, false teachers in their midst, for whom he has some rather harsh words. But for now, may God continue to bless you and keep you in all that you do this day and in all the days ahead.